You are listening to Radical Sacred, a podcast centered around spirituality, nature, and connection.
I'm Phil Dickey, pastor, eco-spiritualist, activist, friend of trees, and a small-town Missourian living in the heart of Dallas.
And I'm Jenny Mislin, spiritual director, teacher, seeker, bird watcher, and a homesick Texan living in France.
Join us now as we live the questions, learn from open-hearted conversations, and explore our own deep and sacred roots. Learning to Love America by Shirley Gok-Lin Lim. Because it has no pure products, because the Pacific Ocean sweeps along the coastline, because the water of the ocean is cold, and because land is better than the ocean. Because I say we rather than they. Because I live in California, I have eaten fresh artichokes and Jacaranda bloom in April and May. Because my senses have caught up with my body, my breath with the air it swallows, my hunger with my mouth. Because I walk barefoot in my house. Because I have nursed my son at my breast. Because he is a strong American boy. Because I have seen his eyes redden when he is asked who he is. Because he answers, I don't know. Because to have a son is to have a country. Because my son will bury me here. Because countries are in our blood and we bleed them. Because it is late and too late to change my mind. Because it is time. Whew.
Wow.
I clearly did not read that poem well enough before starting this podcast. That's
pretty great.
That's a pretty great podcast. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Radical Sacred. We are joined today, not from our normal spots, so if there's background noise, we apologize, but this is also our first episode after the conclusion of Season 3, talking about reciprocity, and this is our 4th of July episode, and we just thought, what a great way to have a conversation, and even, I think we can celebrate today. We're going to celebrate somehow, right? Because our guest is Doug Pagitt, and I have had the good fortune of knowing Doug for, I don't even know how long. It's probably been at least 10 years, but very vaguely for a little while. I met Doug at an Emergent church in Dallas, Texas, where Danielle Schroyer was the pastor. And there was just this lovely conversation. There was probably, 20 of us in the room. And I just remember the conversation ending on whether or not Christians had to believe in the Trinity. And Danielle was very much arguing for, and Doug was like, I don't know if that's the thing that everyone has to die on that hill. And just, it was a really fun conversation. And I was like in seminary at the time. And I was like, these are the conversations I want to be having. Why are we not arguing these things in seminary too, right? Like if I asked that question in seminary, they'd call me the heretic. And I got called a heretic a lot. But all to say, Doug pastored Solomon's Porch in Minneapolis for a number of years, where he also was the founder. He's authored at least, I think, 10 books now. And so you can find them in all kinds of fun places, and you should totally read them because they're great, and they do a great job of documenting some of the emergent church movement. If you are hearing this term emergent church and don't know what it means, call us sometime. We should chat about that because there was a lot of amazing things that came out of the emergent church. But more recently, Doug is the executive director of Vote Common Good. And again, just thought it was a really great connection to have you on the podcast today, Doug. We reconnected a little bit more intentionally at Wild Goose Festival this last year. And what a gift to just be present with you in that space, because there's a lot of amazing people at Wild Goose. And one of the things I love so much about you, Doug, is like, you're in it. Like you are immersed in the goose. Like when I think of the Wild Goose, I think of Doug Pagitt, because like you're playing in the band, you're speaking, you're podcasting, you're also just showing up to other people's talks. Like you're at Beard Hymn, like you're at all the places all the time, like giving the full Wild Goose experience. And I just love that about you. So thank you for joining us and for being present with us. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of biographical information?
Well, no. Hey, look, Jenny and Phil, it's really a treat. Good to be with you both. Thanks for the podcast. Glad to chat. Yeah, look, I think I remember that conversation with Danielle and the church because and the way you said it, I thought was the way I remember it, because I just have a philosophy and a theory and a theology that says to be Christian, you don't have to do or believe anything. Like I don't know who would make the rule about whatever it is that you would have to do, right? I've been around Christianity enough. I know the history of Christianity enough. There might be a whole lot of things that you do believe you found good and beneficial. I kind of take that view that, you find in the book of Timothy, where it talks about how all scripture is God breathed and therefore beneficial for teaching, training. Like, it's good for you, but it's not necessary. And the difference between requirement and available, I just think that's everything. I think human agency is so important. So look, the Trinity as an idea, as a theology, as a belief, that's available to you. And that might be very meaningful and motivating and powerful, or not. And if you don't and somebody else does, then be in community with them, and then you get to share on theirs, and they get to share on your lack of holding it. But I just think that theme will probably come up over and over as we talk about the content of what we're going to talk about today, because I'm not a fan of bounded set systems. I don't like the idea that someone's decided where the boundary is. For at least for the important things. Unimportant things, sure. But for the things that really, really, really matter, let's be a little more open, than not.
Which I love, because, that doctrine didn't even exist for the first couple hundred years of Christianity. So if you're going to say you had to believe in the Trinity to be a Christian, then you're saying that for the first couple hundred years, those people weren't Christian. And that's just silly. Also, a storm is literally blowing in as I'm talking right now.
That's how it goes. We go where the wind blows, and we follow. We wait for the wind to blow.
You might say that the Holy Spirit is moving in our conversation right now as the wind blows in this space. But I will tell you the thing that I have grown to love about the idea of a Trinitarian theology, and not that it has to be limited to a Trinitarian, but the idea of perichoresis, and just the idea of the divine dance, and that happening in community. And where it really came most alive to me was I officiated my cousin's wedding, and they wanted their kind of unity symbol to be dancing in the ceremony. Their first dance was actually in the ceremony. It was outside of this really beautiful quarry. And I didn't even have this planned, but after they danced, I got up and I'm usually very scripted on weddings, but I got up and I was like, this to me was one of the most beautiful uniting moments in a wedding, because there's this theory of perichoresis, and I usually don't think weddings are the time to teach deep theology, but also I'm dropping Greek words in the middle of this wedding ceremony and being like, you just displayed this really beautiful bonding on the divine dance of perichoresis and what's happening between the two of you coming together. Anyway, did not script that either, but this is what happens when you have fun conversations with people.
Yeah. Look, I love the divine dance, but I'm a human being. So if all I can do is imagine the divine dance between the Holy One, then I'm an outsider. If you let me be an insider in the holy dance, I'm all there. But then I don't think we're doing the Trinity. So I'm just not, I can't figure out a Trinitarian view that includes all of humanity and therefore all of other created things also equally part of the dance. So that's all. That's just that little hiccup, because then I think it turns you into a unitary something or another. I'm a ground of being guy. I'm the Apostle Paul, in God we live and move and have our being. So because we live and move in God, the difference between the divine and the human is unimportant. It's noticeable, but it's not crucial. And so that's it. Just that kind of stuff. All the questions that lead to people forming and framing an idea that we call the Trinity or whatever. Just the nature of God and humanity and how do the two interact with each other. That's all we're talking about.
Just casual conversations here. But I do think I loved that you framed it earlier about this idea of it being set up on who's in versus who's out. And I think so much of that can lead into the conversation we do want to have today, because I think that's the reality, is that so many people want to paint these boundaries and use doctrines and theologies and a variety of so many other things to determine who's in and who's out. So I don't know if that led in some ways for you to leave the local church and move into your work with Vote Common Good, but would love to hear what that transition looked like. Also, Jenny, you're here. You should also say something at some point. Sorry, like I'm just like rambling here, but
No, you're fine. Hello everyone. I am here. I am very jet lagged and I don't have my notes in front of me. So, but I love this conversation. I think before we go too far down the road, Doug, I would love to hear about your faith roots and how you came to have such an expansive and inclusive view of theology and others and all the good things.
Well, Jenny, I appreciate your jet lagness. I went the other way one time. We went to Paris. We were sitting with friends at a cafe table. I was so jet lagged. I fell asleep while in the middle of sipping or just after sipping an espresso, and while talking, I dozed off. So if you fall asleep mid-sentence here, I'll be like, I get that feeling. It's very easy to do. I mean, if you're a fast sleeper, which I am, like I'm one of those that can lay down. Like right now, if we wanted to have a sleep contest, I could qualify top 3 between the 3 of us for sure. You just lay down, and I mean, I don't know, the melatonin just kicks in, my eyes shut, and I'm just off to La La Land. You know, sometimes I wake up, can't get back to sleep, but boy, that quick first sleep, it's all. I didn't grow up inside of religion, or and therefore not Christianity either. We didn't even have a religious orientation. Like I never thought I was missing church. I didn't think I was missing attendance at the synagogue, even though a lot of my friends went to synagogue, and I went to their bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. I never felt like, hey, I'm missing out on synagogue. And Sunday mornings, I didn't feel like I was missing church. So religion wasn't a frame of reference. My parents weren't religious. My grandparents weren't religious. That's ended up, I think, helping a lot because I've been able to hold theological views, Christian theological views, without feeling like there's a family lineage. I never feel like I'm disappointing or contradicting my family. Just, I guess, by being religious was sort of a breakaway sort of thing, you know? And I got into that when I was a teenager. I was a junior in high school, just about to turn 17 when my Christian experience started. I didn't know anything going into it. Like I literally didn't think about Christmas and Easter even being religious holidays, let alone being connected to each other. Just had no frame of reference for any of that. And it wasn't important. So not only did I not know, I didn't care about it, religion itself. And then through the invitation of a friend, I went to a thing called the Passion Play, where I saw a dramatic experience of the last week of Jesus's life. Really found deep connection to that story, the idea of abandonment, the idea of God being on the side of humanity, the idea of God not being our enemy, but that we act as the enemy of each other. And so Jesus was never saving us from God. There was no wrath of God. So all of that, when people would later explain, like, I don't know, Christianity is the Son of God saving you from the wrath of God for the love of God. I don't know. I didn't have to do the explanation of that. And I also never heard a Bible story as a child. So I never had to have a child's version of a Bible story, which is super helpful. Frankly, I would encourage it for people, if at all possible, to never take the child's version of stories, especially, the ones that are in our Bible. Like there's barely any in there that you don't have to, I don't know, kind of sanitize in a way to fit kids, So anyway, that's how I started. And then it was evangelicals, kind of, I don't know, moderate leaning evangelicals, like Campus Crusade for Christ people, but not fundamentalist types. There were a lot of Jimmy Carter evangelicals around. I remember this is 1983. So it had just been, a few years earlier that a bunch of those people had voted for Jimmy Carter, and that came up and they talked about that, and they were Republicans and Democrats. It wasn't hardwired into the religious right the religious right takeover of evangelicalism and the abandonment of evangelicalism by good-hearted, faithful people hadn't yet taken place. So anyway, it was that period. I got in fast. I take on hobbies and engagements quickly and fast, and I go all in. So that happened when I was 17, and I went to a Christian college really to play basketball. I didn't know there were Christian colleges. Then I ended up working at a big evangelical church, and then lots of things kind of came from that. I did a lot of leader organizing, and I always thought Christianity was like, it was a people movement. Like I took that stuff people would say pretty seriously, you know, and they'd be like, Christianity's not the whole business about Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship with God. I never really understood what they were talking about, but I understood when people said Christianity is a movement of people engaging in the life of God in the world for the benefit and blessing of the world. Like that kind of made sense. And somehow I noticed right away that the Bible's full of first name stories. And I like that. I thought it was supposed to be personal. I didn't know anything going in, especially reading the Gospels, and I realized Jesus was saying something different to just about everybody. He wasn't running the same old script all the time. And even in the places where you have different accountings of the similar story in different Gospels, there was always something a little different. So like diversity was always was built in. And then the fact that there were 4 Gospels in and of itself, I found quite wonderful. Like, why did you have to have Mark and Matthew and Luke and John's versions? Well, maybe because there's a community of a holy dance going on. Yeah. So I don't know. It kind of started that way. And I thought the point of God was to free human beings from the oppression that we put on one another. And,
You still think that?
Yeah, I do. I was on a great conversation with someone yesterday named Katie Gaudini, who has written a book called Esther's Army. It's her study of the religious right and the women who power it. And so she's done 9 years of research and all this stuff, and it's really pretty great. And so at the end of it, we were talking about, like, how do you think about what? Because she said, I used to be an evangelical and now I'm not. And so we talked about, like, okay, what did you leave where you knew, like, okay, now I'm not evangelical? Like, what was the marker? Just for her. Wouldn't be true for anybody else. So she talked about some of the things that were for her, and we were chatting, and it kind of dawned on me for afresh, or maybe the first time, I don't know, that believing Jesus more and believing the Bible more is what kept me from being a conservative evangelical. Now I'm a progressive evangelical just because I refuse to give over the whole category to the crowd. But I became more progressive the more I believe Jesus and the more I believe the Bible. And I know for some people it goes the other way. They have to let go of all that stuff. But I'm like, I'm just trying to catch up. Like, man, I run around in a pretty woke world of wokies, but, not quite to the level of in Christ there is no male or female, Jew or Gentile. Like the Apostle Paul was trying to push for a real non-binary Christianity from the 2,000 years ago. So I don't know. I've just found interpretations of the Bible to match the people who do the interpreting, and not always to match the text itself. And so I don't know. The Bible doesn't bother me as much as it does others, and sometimes I find it quite prodding and liberating. So I don't know. That was my track.
I'm curious a little bit about, like, maybe what did you say, like, a movement of people? Like you viewed Christianity as a movement of people, or the religion thereof. Like, is that what keeps you in the Christian faith?
Maybe. I guess I still find it meaningful to identify as a Christian. I mean, I know a lot of people who leave Christianity because they think it makes them look bad. I don't really care if it makes me look bad. Like, I'm not bad, so I don't, I don't know who I'm posing for, that I'm like, hey, if you think I'm Christian, you're going to misunderstand me. I don't know what in the world, so, because nobody cares what I think or what I do or whatever. You know what I mean? Like me personally. In fact, in the political world I travel in the wokey kind of left-leaning world, like people are just thrilled that there's religious people out saying things that feel good.
Look, I live in Texas, Doug. James Talarico, right? People are like, their minds are being blown. That like, who is this guy? Does this?
Yeah, how's that possible? And
we're
you're like,
trying to be like,
wait till you get wait till you meet his carpenter. That guy's really gonna blow your mind. Yeah. So I don't think anything keeps me in. I think I'm just choosing to stay in.
That's a great answer. Yeah. That's great.
And I also kind of don't care. It's really important, really matters. I mean, I spend my life, talking and traveling and working and writing and thinking and all that. Because I know everyone wants and would benefit from a story that we can find our lives contributing to. We need big narratives or myths or storylines or something. Because that's just how human beings are. There's nothing divine about it or good about it. It's just human beings are pattern recognizers and meaning makers and formers of communities. So we're going to just make meaning out of communities. It's what we're going to do. And boy, I just like what Christianity asks me to do for the world. Even with its downsides, like I don't mind the fact that Christianity is full of a bunch of people who really did it poorly, and we have some fixing and making up to do. That feels okay because I recognize that, I not only have to do that with my family and ancestors, I literally have to do that with my own past. Like there's some people that I won't have seen in 30 years. And so I have a history that I would like to be better than when the one who I was 30 years ago. So I don't know, that stuff just doesn't bother me. That's how we do it. I think similarly about our country as we get to that conversation too. I think, this is as much our country as it was our founders. I mean, our faces might not be on Mount Rushmore and we may not have signed some of the originating documents, but this land is your land. This land is my land, and not just your land and not just my land. I don't know. I like that. I was around people who would say things like Christianity is just the best option I've found so far, but I'm not shopping, my script says pause to drink water. So.
As you should. Okay, as we roll into July 4th and all of the things that it symbolizes and has come to mean and used to mean and could mean, what do we do?
The other day, somebody read me a poem I think it's from Langston Hughes, or maybe it's a statement. And the statement was something like, I don't think America is a lie. I think America is a disappointment because it hasn't lived up to its hope yet. And our job is to help it live up to its hope. And I would like that to be true. We live in a country where the narrative about the country itself is a prime storyline. I don't know that everybody who's lived in all of society has this sort of third person approach to them living inside of a country, which is kind of an other thing, and we're relating to it, but we do. So people in the United States, partly because of our very young founding and partly because of our very aspirational founding and partly because we are constantly checking in on ourselves as a nation and how we're doing, we really do have this relationship to like, well, who are we in relationship to this? And then we say country. And I wonder what we mean when we say country. I don't think we mean the land. I don't think we mean the government. I don't think we mean ideals. I'm not sure what we mean when we say like, I don't know. I'm only a citizen of this country. I don't have dual citizenship. Some people do, and they came to this country being born somewhere else, or their family gave them citizenship. So they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm connected to a couple of places. This is just one of them. I'm like, oh no, my family tree of a nation is a stick. There's no branches. I'm just here. As far as I can tell, all of my people and my family background came here a long, long time ago, and I don't even have a good Pagitt immigration story, where I can say, well, great granny came from here or there. I don't know. So somebody came from somewhere, but we don't know. We don't talk about that stuff in my family. And as far back as I can tell, it's been quite a while. So this is it. So then I have to make up, like, what do I mean by America? I don't know. Curious.
I've never thought of it that way, and it's such a brilliant framing and question. And so, yeah, thanks for that invitation to even just think about it from that perspective. Will you circle back now, will you share a little bit of what got you into Vote Common Good and why you wanted to, again, leave pastoring in the local church to fully diving in on being the executive director of Vote Common Good?
Yeah. Two things were happening over the same period of time. I was thinking more about what contribution I could make to the political movement to help religiously motivated voters in the United States know that they had options other than voting for Republicans. I have always known that. Many people that I know have not always known that, frankly. There are a lot of people in a lot of places where your religious identity and your political identity come as a package deal. It happens for Democrats. It happens for Republicans. And there are a lot of Christian people, especially evangelical and Catholic Christian people, who didn't know what to do about Trump in 2016. So they went along to get along. And all they knew was they couldn't vote for a Democrat, or at least not her, when it was the other her. I mean, they've come up with lots of reasons not to vote for Democrats, but at the time it was just that one, just that one. Because apparently they had all voted for Barack Obama before. Everybody seems to have voted for Barack Obama in some parts of this world. But anyway, people, and that was a real struggle. I truly knew it. I remember very distinctly an interaction I had in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was speaking at a church and I was going to go meet some of the elders of the church afterward. And it wasn't about political stuff. It was about one of the books I'd written or something. And so this was in June or July of 2016. And I had mentioned how excited I was to be voting for Hillary Clinton in November. And I remember the head elder of the church just looking at me, totally puzzled and dismissive, and saying, I have never met a pastor of my tradition that votes for Democrats. And I thought, well, yes, you have, but they just didn't tell you. But it's okay. You didn't know that you had met some, it's like when someone says, I've never met a gay so-and-so. You're like, give it a minute. But he really, and that experience I started to pay attention to and realized more and more often people had said things like, voting for the worst Republican is still better than voting for the best Democrat every day of the week. And I understand that sensibility. I feel that way in the inverse right now, like maybe not the worst, but pretty close. So I know how easy political identity can take over all of your other identities. But there are a lot of people who thought that their faith had led them to the most righteous, moral political party, righteous, moral candidates, all the rest of it. Then when that got called into question, turns out they were just partisans, and they didn't like that about themselves. So we wanted to help those people know that there were some other choices. So that was going on 2017, 2018, 2019. In 2020, I'd been at the church that I'd started that you mentioned called Solomon's Porch. From its founding, which had been 20 years earlier, we'd done a lot of things. I felt like it was time for a shift to happen and for me to transition to other things. So in January of 2020, I left that role, not because I wanted to go into the Vote Common Good stuff, but then I did end up doing that work full time. We were going to travel the whole country for a year, and that was, just months before COVID. And so, and I kind of thought it would be, maybe a 1 year or 9 month thing. And then Donald Trump got reelected. Now we're still at it, and it's exhausting and disappointing. So we still do the same work, but now we also work with the Democratic Party and helping them reach out to faith voters. We try to help make it more, well, and I'm not saying every person of well, you probably picked up. I don't think every person of faith should do anything. So whatever. But I think it would be better if there was greater parity and that political identity and religious identity weren't as intertwined as they are, because I don't think that's good for either. And so that's what we're trying to get to. But my hope is not to, I'm not trying to get the 90% of black church attenders to stop voting for Democrats right now. That's not the problem I'm trying to solve. We're trying to get the 80% of evangelicals, some of them, to stop voting only for Republicans when they know they don't want to. We think that's 15 or 20% of them that are really conflicted about it. So we don't try to change anyone's mind. We try to work with people whose minds are changing to know what they can do about it.
That's a really important distinction. Will you expound a little bit more on what that looks like showing up and how you come to understand those people or even meet those people? And then it just feels disarming. Like, it's disarming to just come in and say, I'm not trying to change your mind, but it's just, if you're curious about your mind is changing, here's X, Y, and Z, or conversation or opportunities.
Yeah, and some of it is like what we literally say to people, like we say that to them, but it's also a mindset that we keep in our work. So we know what our role is. One of the jokes we have in our public presentations is we'll say things like, look, we're not here to convince you what a problem Donald Trump is. The man's like a self-cleaning oven. He does all the work for you. Like, if you look at that guy and you see all of that and you need me to explain to you why that's a problem, that's not going to work. I couldn't do half the job the fella does all by himself, right? So that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek acknowledgement that that's not our role. And also, if someone doesn't want to change, to force change upon them, I don't think is kind, I don't think it's effective, and I don't think it's humanizing. I think we shouldn't do it. But there's a lot of people who want to change on a lot of things, right? So find those people, and I guess knock the dust off of your feet in any town you go to where people don't want to hear your message. I mean, there's some ancient spiritual ideas embedded in there. So that's what we're up to. We're not. When people say to us things like, "Well, what do I do to work with my uncle to to get him to change his mind?" We typically say something like, "It's not always just your uncle, and first thing you should do is not try to change his mind. The first thing you should do is try to listen to what's on his mind, and then see if you have something to offer that he might actually find helpful." Okay, so all of that is just an approach, right? And if you're in a political conversation with someone, there's a possibility that they are open to your ideas as well. They've presented themselves. If they don't want to talk about politics, which a lot of people don't want to do, then don't talk about politics with them. But if they bring it up, it's like, hey, and we have this thing we're working on in our work. This phrase of saying to people, would it be important to you if this idea was true? Right. So would it be important to you if Donald Trump was like committing crimes? Would that matter to you? Because if it doesn't, well then, okay. And there's a lot of people who be like, nope. Or if you're telling me he's committing crimes, then nope. Okay, well then you know. So I don't know, kind of figuring out when you have an agenda for another person to be different so that your life can be better or more desirable, that is different than wanting another person's life to be better so that their life could be better. What a lot of us end up thinking in politics is, oh, I want another person's life to be different so that a third person's life would be better. That's what we tell ourselves, because we get in this hero, villain, victim narrative where we're the hero and we're protecting the victims from some villain. It's not a good way to organize life, but it's highly motivating. But it's not true or accurate or good or any of the rest of it. So we try really hard in our work to encourage people to first and foremost have the other person's well-being in mind. Are you discomforted by being a supporter of this political movement? Because if you're not, well, I'm not here to tell you to be discomforted. And I mean, I guess you could say to them, would it matter to you if the federal government stopped funding programs around the world that help the most vulnerable in an effort to save $0? Or in an
in
effort
our
to
own
save
country.
$1 billion? I don't know. Would it bother you? Like, and apparently a lot of people are like, nope, doesn't bother me. Okay. So then you got a whole other project to work on, right? Like, oh, maybe we should work on give a shittery project for a little while instead of like vote for this, right? Like, there's a lot of work we have to do before we could get to, how one can, as an ever expanding sense of common good.
We've been talking to a lot of people about calling on their ancestors, on finding mentors, on ways to just learn from those that came before you and sustain during this hard season. Doug, who are ancestors that you are calling on? Who are mentors that
Yeah, right on.
help you keep going?
What a great project that is. We're currently working on one of our tours that's going to start in October. That's going to map and follow the path taken by the Freedom Riders in 1961, 65 years ago, to call for a change in voting laws that ultimately becomes the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So these young people in their 20s got in buses and went from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans. Right, so very famous people become part of this. King is in this thing, John Lewis, the rest of them. We're going to retrack that path. And some of the people who are, very few of them are still alive 65 years later because they're in their mid to upper 80s. But some of those people are going to be with us, and their kids are going to be with us, and their grandkids are going to be with us. And as it turns out, in light of Supreme Court rulings just recently and other actions in those states, the very same places where they had to go and fight for the rights to vote are the same places where those rights are being rolled back and where congressional districts are being taken and gerrymandered up so that black representation is not available there. The same places. And so, I mean, that's only a 65-year-old ancestor story. But if you go 65 years back from 1961, you're in 1900. You go 40 years back from that, and you're in the 1860s. And so it's something that I heard somebody refer to in a theological movement when they're talking about communion, but they use this phrase called non-identical repetition. It's an interesting way to think about communion. And that phrase just, it's one of those things where the first time you hear it, it just stays with you. I'm like, oh, non-identical repetition. So it's happening again, not exactly the same, but the same. And that work, the who's the we work, is that project. Who's included when we say we? And for any of us, when you say we, you always have someone in mind. Someone's part of your we. And sometimes your we's are very small. Sometimes your we is very wide. Sometimes your we is expansive. Usually a we is the opposite of an us versus them. We have a history of a politics that calls us to we the people that's really been an us versus them. And we have a religious tradition of Christianity, which is we the people, the work of the people, that's really turned into an us versus them. And in both cases, we literally bless that us versus them. We literally create a hierarchy. We give people different outfits. We create a system of inclusion and exclusion and rewards and punishments. And so I've got a little project kind of going on that wants to expand the sense of we, and not for altruism, for actual, it makes things better. Wisdom of the crowd stuff, many eyes, all that theory of how do we know, collective knowledge, all that, and ancestors fit into that. So there's a long tradition of people trying to figure these patterns out. So I'm not sure that answered your question very.
Well, it just, you said, you talked about stories a little bit earlier, and the idea that not just because they're divine in nature, whatever, but just because there's just power in story. And so, the story you just told is a really powerful one looking at a timeline, but there's more than just a timeline there. There's a really powerful story that emerges from the narrative you just told. And I don't know, I guess I'm kind of wondering what stories are continuing to inspire you, and whether those are real stories, factual stories, true stories, maybe they're mythologies, that just continue to inspire the work that you're doing. And not just you, the we, right? The collective we in this work.
We were in Pennsylvania, little town area, forgotten the name, I shouldn't, Humboldt, Pennsylvania or something. And we were working with a candidate who was running for the state legislature there. And we don't typically work with those kinds of candidates, but if we're working at the federal level and then somebody's running for a state seat and we're in town, we do an event with them. So we talked to her campaign, and she said, we said we'd love to do an event. We pull up with our buses. We set out all of our stuff. We have a sound system. We introduce faith voters. We do a media thing. There's a whole dealio. And we'd love to do one with you. And she said, great. So we said, okay, let's pick a spot. Like, where could we do it? And she said, her team said, there's a restaurant right at this intersection with a big parking lot, and the restaurant's closed. And I think that could be perfect, especially on a Sunday when we were going to do this. The restaurant wasn't open any longer. And we're like, great. And they said, great. So we do this event there. And we got there in the morning, 11 o'clock or so. We start setting up for a 1 o'clock event, and we got our buses out, and chairs are out, and tables and yard signs and all this stuff. And a little before 1 o'clock, I see this pickup truck come driving in the parking lot. It's driving with more attitude than someone who's just strolling in. And the guy parks fast, door opens fast. I see him get out. So I go walking over there because I know my role as the leader of this thing. Like, I don't know what's going on. But I walk over, and this guy is looking around, and he's very agitated looking. And he sees me coming up to him. He goes, "Are you part of this?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what the hell are you doing here?" I said, "We're going to have this event for this candidate. We're both come and go. We do this faith, hope, and love thing." He goes, "This is my restaurant. Why are you in my parking lot?" It dawns on me at that moment that we didn't reach out to the owner. They didn't reach out to the owner. No one did. We just squatted in this guy's parking lot. So he is like, well, what? And this is, in 2024. So there's like signs out for Harris walls. And he's like, "Look, I'm a Christian, conservative Trump supporter. Get out of here." And I'm like, "Sir, I am so terribly sorry. Let me go over and we'll start packing up." And then he's and he goes, "Okay, but tell me again, what is going on?" And we said, "Well, this person's running for office. She's running for your state legislature here." And he goes, "I've heard her name. Is she here?" I said, "Yeah, she's right over there." So he walks over, and then he comes back and he said, "Okay, I met her. Obviously there was a mistake. Just do your event and then get out of here." That moment I thought, I'm looking at a modern day Good Samaritan. Because in the Good Samaritan story, the Samaritans were the bad people, and then the bad person, the Samaritan, took care of the person who was in need and went out of his way to care for the person. I'm like, okay, we're not the Good Samaritans here. The Trump supporter is. So it was a big property. He's then out mowing the lawn on his tractor, a little tractor while we do our event. And after the event ended, and it went great, I walked out with 2 beers and $100. And I said, "Hey, these are both for you unless you want to share one with me. And I'd be glad. And I'd like to rent your spot for $100 if you think that's fair." And he said, "Yeah, it's very fair. So let's go over by your bus." So he drives his tractor over, and we sit over there and we start chatting. Tells me that the restaurant's closed because they're going to move to South Carolina because he can't stand the politics in Pennsylvania anymore. It's gotten too liberal. And that everything he owns is in this big trailer that's going to pull out tomorrow. And we hit it off. We're about the same age. He tries to convince me to buy his restaurant because I said my wife and I want to open a little music venue and a yoga studio and all this stuff. And he's like, "Hey, you should do it here." I said, "I live in Minnesota." He goes, "No, move here. You'd love it here. Your people are here." And then he said, "I was at church this morning," because it was Sunday morning. And he said, "And just today I was thinking, I remember when I would come to church and people of different political opinions would be in here. And we would look at each other and know what we disagreed on, but also knew that we loved each other. And I don't see that anymore. And it broke my heart this morning. Then I pull up in my parking lot and here you people are. Faith, hope, and love on the other side. And I thought, when I was out there mowing the lawn, maybe this is what. So I was asking myself the whole time he's talking, if I owned a property and a bunch of red hats pulled up, I don't think 2 beers and $100 and maybe we need to figure out how to live together would have been what was first and foremost on my mind. So I want to go and do likewise with that guy. Right? I want him to be my go therefore and do likewise. And those stories, we have dozens of them. And heartbreakingly, I can also tell you dozens of stories where we've tried to connect with people on our side of the political equation for whom somehow we didn't pass the muster. They just couldn't break themselves to, do a thing with us or let us be in their parking lot or do something at their church or it's too political. And it's like, oh man. So, yeah, I mean, all of these stories, and they're all very real, meaningful stories of what we're up to as Americans. I mean, this is a country that, formed out of revolution against itself. Like we don't tell this story very often, that the Revolutionary War was a fractional breakaway of a group of people saying, we don't want to be a part of our nation anymore. That's what, we didn't start from nothing. We started from a we and said us versus them. And somehow that's been embedded in us, and we haven't reconciled it, and we really haven't reconciled the Civil War, and we haven't reconciled a lot of things that we've done. And so, yeah, I mean, those are the dilemmas of what it means to be human, especially human in the United States. And look, nobody knows what it's like to be an American in 2026, except the people who are living in America in 2026. This is a first-time experience for all of us. It's like what every parent should say to their first teenagers. We've never done this before. We don't know what to do. So we're going to make it up and give us a minute, I remember when our kids would get in trouble as teenagers and we had 4 of them. And, the thing they would always want to know would be like, all right, I don't know, just go to your room. And they'd be like, how long or what's the consequence going to be? And I would have to say like, I don't know. I've never, there's no book. There's no chart that I go down the left side and slide over to the right side and say it's going to be 2 hours or 20 days. I don't know. Now your mom and I have to make this up and we didn't have this on our plan. I don't know what to do right now. So just go over there and we'll get to you in a minute. But it's that's most of life, right? Like we really don't know exactly how to do this. It's not identical to the past. So we can't just pull a manual off the shelf and say, here's what we're going to do. We have to do it, I think. I don't know if when whatever founding father, that story of like the reporters asked him, what did you all do in there? And he said, well, we made a republic if you can keep it, whatever that story is. I don't know if that ever happened, but the notion is real. Like, is this a country we want to keep? But most people I know were born into this country. They didn't ask for it. And maybe they don't like it. And maybe they don't want to be here. Some of their families were brought here against their will. Some of them were brought here as slaves. Some people were trafficked in here. There's lots of people here for lots of reasons. And not everybody's happy about it. Not everybody wants it to succeed. I don't know, like get along and succeed and all the rest. Should also say I sound more generous right now than I am because I made a video today when I was walking out of Menards, which is like a big deep home improvement store. I had bought an American flag really because I wanted the flagpole because I'm going to put a Minnesota state flag on it. But I bought an American flag on a pole, and when I walked out, I thought snarky, so I turned on my camera and made an Instagram and Facebook video that said, hey, I'm walking out of Menards right now, and I just bought an American flag. And it kind of dawned on me that I'm not planning to beat any police officers with it at all. So I guess I'm not in a very MAGA mood.
Also not wrong, right? Also not wrong.
Yeah. It's like, okay, no. And again, I wouldn't be such a smartass about that if these people weren't like defending those people now, right? Like, okay.
Setting up a fund
right.
for them, right? Like having a fund to
Yeah, you gotta pardon them. And I live in Minneapolis, where the federal government attacked our city and killed our citizens. So, and all the don't tread on me friends that I have, all the Second Amendment right people that said we carry our weapons because when the federal government turns against us, we are going to show up. Still waiting for your call, waiting for your text to see if we need anything in January last year, earlier this year. Haven't heard from you.
Oh.
I know I did hear from you. You said comply or die. So, okay, fair enough.
Okay, Jenny, I have a rapid fire thing that I want to do, and then you can end us on something really beautiful because that's what you do really well.
And I'm sorry to talk so long.
No, don't be sorry at all. This is like, there's no apology needed because I think this is the hard conversation that so many of us are wondering, how do we have it on a regular basis, or we just exist in our own echo chambers, and we're not having we're not even sharing spaces. But I want to just rapid fire a few things at you, like phrases, comments, ideas that you probably hear a lot, and just get like your response to it. And some of them are things that I've heard as a pastor too. So things like, well, we should always be political but never partisan.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that statement?
That would be great. I would love that. I would love for us to be able to say we all want the same thing and there's different ways to get there. Sometimes that's true. And then there's times where we don't all want the same thing. The Republican Party wanted, and the president called for, and the Supreme Court today said no, to revoke the 14th Amendment and the 1940 Congressional Act of Citizenship to remove birthright citizenship. We've been removing rights of women. We've been removing rights of underrepresented people, especially Black people in the South when it comes to voting. We've been removing rights. I wish that wasn't partisan. I honestly, it would be great if a bunch of Republicans were like, no, that's a terrible idea. And a bunch of Democrats were like, no, that's a great idea. And we could just take on the political issue. But the thing that has happened across the board is that Democrats tend to say, we will hold to the view that the party holds to, no matter what we used to think. And Republicans will say, we will hold to anything that Donald Trump tells us we now need to hold to. It's just bonkers, I mean, at least on the Democratic side, there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of difference. And, it's that old thing, like, I'm not a member of any major political party, I'm a Democrat, that kind of thing. Like, that feels better to me than this, like, everyone fall in line and do this. I wish we could be nonpartisan. But do you honestly think that of the three cases the Supreme Court looked at today, the one about transgender issues, the issue about voting, mail-in voting, and the issue of birthright citizenship, do you really think that if Joe Biden, as a Democrat, had been advocating for those cases, do you really think that Thomas and Alito would have sided with Biden on that? Come on. I mean, I don't think so. I think those guys have made rulings and 91-page write-ups about birthright citizenship that defy everything they used to say simply because they have their marching orders. So it's like, look, I wish we could be. Do I think churches should be engaging in political or partisan stuff? I don't think churches should do anything. I think they can, but I don't think they should. And if you don't want to, then my advice to pastors is just say, I don't want us to. But don't do the I don't want to under the auspices of some higher calling. If you don't want to talk about that stuff or you don't want your church to be engaged in it, just say it. I mean, could we just be truthful about things and not make it part of some this happens a lot where there'll be like some organization will make a rule and you can almost always track back the rule to someone did something. Like, can't we just say Kevin did a thing and we shouldn't do that anymore? Do we now have to like make just a policy that's nameless to the idea that we're not going to like, it just feels so, I don't know.
Or don't swim in that hole because somebody swam in that hole and didn't come out of it, like.
Yeah. Right. One or two people. And so I don't know. A lot of pastors don't want churches to talk about politics because they don't want people to not like them, or they don't want to show their own political. This is the one that really gets me, Bill and Jen. This one really gets me. When pastors are like, I don't want people in my congregation to know how I vote because I don't want to put subtle pressure that they vote the way I do. Like, what kind of cult are you running? Because I know a lot of pastors, people don't do what pastors tell them to do.
If only,
let alone
right?
what they sort of imply by their behavior. Like, what do you think is going on? Or they'll say things like, I don't want someone who would vote differently to think that they shouldn't be comfortable here because they disagree with me. Why are you running a situation where people who differ with you feel uncomfortable? Like, deal with the issue that you don't know how to have difference form community. That's what's going on. This is a great opportunity to say we fundamentally disagree on this political thing, and I'm with you and you're with me, and we are in this thing together, and it's us. Like, why are you squandering that opportunity? I mean, pastors should stand up and be comfortable saying, like, look, I'm going to vote for Gail in this next election, and some of you aren't, and that's great. And if you want me to change my mind, let me know. And I'm not interested in changing any of yours, or I am. So watch out, because I might bring it up. I don't know. Just be normal. Could we just be normal people,
right,
and not be some like, well, I'd never, and parishioners, I never want to go to a church where I disagree with the pastor. Okay, that's a great idea. Then just make sure the pastor only talks about the predetermined things, and we will have an ever-growing list of no-talk rules around here. The things we will not talk about,
well,
as we build our spirituality to become full, complete human beings.
Well, that's what, like, so often the next one was, is I want a pastor that's going to just preach about Jesus and not politics, right? Which we don't have time probably to go down that whole rabbit hole, because there's a whole rabbit hole there, right? There's Aubrey Hendrick's book on the politics of Jesus is probably a good start for that one, but there's just a lot of really good conversations to be had around that. But
or you just want Jesus. You only want you only want the preacher to talk about old political ideas, not current ones. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, you can talk about politics, but not these.
Right. Okay. Patriotism. What does it mean to be patriotic and Christian in this day and age on this 4th of July?
I think it depends on who you are, because there's going to be a 10-year-old standing on a street corner on Saturday when a parade comes by, and they're going to feel really good about this big collective activity, and there's flags, and there's boats, and there's floats. I mean, maybe some places have boats for sure.
Sometimes they have boats. That's right. Where I grew up, they did. Yeah,
they have boats. And they're going to feel really good about it, and they're going to get all gymmed up into America, and they're going to feel great. There's going to be a convict who's recently out of prison. He's going to stand there and think, it wasn't just what I did that got me into this situation. There's going to be ancestors of slaves who are like, oh, you kidding me? There's going to be ancestors of slaves who say, this is the greatest country I could have ever imagined. Look what we've overcome. Look what we've done. So I think patriotism is about as personal as you get. And you can be patriotic and speak against your country. You can be patriotic and speak for your country. You can be there is no patriotism is a sense that this country is something you want to form an opinion for its well-being. But I want the best for every country. I want the best for Honduras and for Guatemala and for Mozambique, and that would be. But I don't know anything or care. I just, generically want the best for all those places. So somebody could be like, I don't really know anything about America. Because a lot of people don't know anything about this notion of what we call, whatever it means to make us an American. But now if you're politically engaged and you think that what's happening with this government and what's happening with our sort of political ruling class and what's happening with our wealth disparity that's giving so much more power to other people and not to everybody. And it can feel like patriotism is not, we're the best. My patriotism is, we have work to do. I have a worker kind of mentality of just temperament, like I think apathy is the opposite of love. It's very Elie Wiesel, right? Like hate's not the opposite of love. Indifference is. So, the USA crowd and the what have we done crowd, they're kind of right in the same lane, It's the, but there's probably a way to be that's patriotic too. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. I would also say I think America is a pretty good idea. I think it would be good to have a place where your citizenship is not based on blood or soil, where it doesn't matter who you are, where there's not an ethnic or religious demand or limit on who you can be and how you can be. It doesn't mean that's not playing out in some ways. It clearly is. Certain groups of people are given more preferences in this society than others, and there's more of some and less of others. There's lots of things that don't, equality is real iffy. I don't even know what we mean, what we mean by it, but something important. We've just never had anything close to it, so I don't know what we're talking about sometimes.
As we roll into this July 4th weekend, Doug, what invitation or expansion or what would you like to leave people with?
America is at its core people who are not like you just as much as it is people who are like you. And America is people who don't like you as much as it is people who do like you. Like we do a lot of work to counter Christian nationalism, but you can be a Christian nationalist and be an American. I mean, look at the House of Representatives and other things. It doesn't disqualify you from being an American. You are an American. Even if you hold views that are completely opposite of mine, there is no take America back from them. That thing we have to set aside and build a better us. I should say that better. Build a better we.
Oh, but us is a good, it plays double entendre.
I know, it's got a US in it. It's just so, but I pick it for the us versus them versus we. I got a whole little rhetorical trick I do there, and it's not totally working yet. It's like working on improv, like an improv bit.
It's working. You're getting there.
That joke's about to land. That kind of feeling.
Doug, this has been just so lovely. If people want to find more about Vote Common Good and you, or if there's things coming up that you'd love to share with our audience, we would love for you to just share what's coming up.
Yeah, a couple of things. We did a documentary about a cross-country bike ride that we completed a couple of years ago, where we rode our bicycles from San Diego, California, at the Tijuana border, along the U.S.-Mexico border, all the way down to southern Texas, and then along the coast and across Florida. So we biked across the country, and there's a documentary made about that called Who's the We? It's a 90-minute documentary. A 1-hour version of it will be shown on PBS stations starting in August. So if people listen or watch PBS, they should reach out to their PBS stations and make sure they know that this is coming, because that's how PBS systems work. It's kind of cool. It's called Who's the We? A Cross-Country Journey of Discovery. And it follows us along that path and deals with lots of the issues that we've talked about here, from immigration to faith and Christian nationalism and who's included and what the we is and all that stuff. Super excited about that. We work with candidates around the country. We run a podcast, we do that kind of stuff. And if you're in Minneapolis, come say hi. You should do that. And votecommongood.com is Vote Common Good is the organization. So if you look that up, and there's lots of vote something good and lots of vote commons and lots of do common good. So you could get yourself confused. But frankly, if you land on any of those that use good or common good or vote goodly or any of it. I don't know.
You're probably going to be in good shape.
It could be okay. Yeah, if you find us in that gaggle, that's fine too. But you're not going to get too lost if you're in with one of those anybody in that crowd.
And are you going to be back at Wild Goose as well?
I will be at Wild Goose. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I primarily now go to Wild Goose so that I can play in the honky tonk band on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. It's just, last year was so great, and I cannot wait to do it again. And yes, I will be there. And if other people want to go or have heard of it, or this could be a good year.
Come join us at the Goose.
I have no reason to know why it's a good year, but
just like wine. Sometimes they say it's a good year, and you're like, sure, of course it was.
That's right.
Doug Pagitt, thank you.
Hey, let me ask you, do you guys know anything about wine? Let me ask you a question. No?
Not enough to pretend like I do.
I'm turning 60 on Sunday, and we're having a party. And somebody at my 50th birthday gave me a bottle of wine from my birth year. So it was 50 years old. Now it is 60. And I was going to open it. Is 60-year-old wine in a bottle going to be good wine? Or does it go bad?
I think that's the whole point, right? It ages like fine wine.
But is it because it was in barrels or because it was in bottles? I don't know.
I have known if it's not corked well or like not contained well, then like it will rot the cork and the cork will then like so. But I don't know if that happens in 60 years, if that happens in 100 years. I don't know. But barrels or bottles, I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Okay. See, these are the things that you realize none of us know. So why do we think we know so much about the other important things?
But we sure love to say things like you just aged so well like a fine wine.
Yeah, like a fine wine. And I was at breakfast with some people and somebody ordered poached eggs. A couple of us at the table, there were like 6 of us, said, oh man, I should have gotten poached eggs, huh? And then someone said, how do you make poached eggs?
I have no clue.
None of us knew.
Yeah.
None of us knew.
I think we all knew a spoon. Like you have to hold it in a spoon or something. Like we
knew they existed. We all thought about ordering them. Someone did. None of us know how they're made. Don't even know what it is. It's just that one of those realizations we're around with very, worldly people, adults, don't even know a poached egg. It was just like, okay, hey, let's get back to talking about the nature of God for a minute. Something we do know about.
It's like a poached egg. I think, is that what you were going to tie it back to? God is like a
nature. It's so absurd. Like we don't know anything, but we know a lot, and then like not anything. I don't know how wine works. I don't know how the tap on my credit card works. That one is really just I just hold it over there and it goes bing, and I'm like, okay, fair enough.
I love it.
Don't you love that? I just love how much we just don't know.
No clue.
And somebody knows all of that. And then on another topic, they're like, oh, honestly, I have no idea. Yeah. We all don't know pretty much everything. And a couple of us know a couple of things.
I love that. That's not a bad send off. A couple of us know a couple of things and most of us don't know anything. Keep expanding and inviting and including and listening, leading with listening, friends.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug.
Right on. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks so much, Doug. We'll see you at Wild Goose.
Strangers.
Yeah.
Okay. See you
Take care.
On the road.
Thank you for being a part of the Radical Sacred community.
In these uncertain times, may you cling to hope and deep connection, and may you work towards living in the spirit of reciprocity with all beings.
Our lovely intro and outro music is Beach Song by the band Samaritan.
And it's just the two of us here at Radical Sacred, so please help us out by sharing with your friends, rating and reviewing us. Find more of our work on Substack and Instagram.
Remember, you are on sacred ground. Stay rooted.